Good Monday morning to you all. Welcome to the July 12th, 2021 edition of Let It Be Known. The National Newspaper Publishers Association and the Black Press of America welcomes all. This morning, we're going to hear from a New Day Coalition for Black America, born from a spiritual vision to intentionally eradicate factors prohibiting fair and just access to affordable housing, quality health care, holistic education, economic development, and equal justice for people of color. A New Day Coalition for Equity for Black America was formed, and it comprises a group of remarkable and dedicated clergy from around the country, led by its visionary, the Reverend Hosea Hines. He's the pastor of the Church, Christ Tabernacle Church of Jackson, Mississippi. We're going to talk with Pastor Hines and several others, including Don Robinson, William Rosser, Warren Stewart, and Bishop David Cooper. But first, of course, let us start with the headlines for today. In fact, there is one headline for today that we're going to bring you because we have six distinguished guests that we really want to get to our audience. The Texas Legislative Black Caucus and the Texas National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, held a joint news conference over the weekend, and several rallies were held to beat back the voter suppression laws in Texas. They explained how race has infected the entire legislative process around the passage of SB 1 and HB 3 and how the bill will disproportionately impact African Americans and other minorities. State Senator Royce West told us that it's Jim Crow 2.0. Rallies are planned today and in the future as Governor Abbott in Texas continues to hold special sessions to try and push this bill through that would further suppress the vote in Texas. We will continue to keep on that story. As you know, you can read about it in all of our Texas newspapers and, of course, at blackpressusa.com. We should be joined shortly by our president and CEO, Dr. Ben Chavis. But right now, we want to say good morning to everyone, again, who's watching. Of course, Cheryl Smith from the Texas Metro News, our great and distinguished publisher there. We always love to see Cheryl. Joni King is watching as well. Also, Tabernacle Hines is watching, Annette Phillips, Joni King, and so many others. But right now, we want to say good morning to our special guests from the New Day Coalition. Let us bring on Pastor Hosea Hines. He's from Mississippi. Bishop David Cooper, he's out of New Mexico. Pastor Aaron Jones out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Pastor Don Robinson of New Orleans. Pastor William Rosser of Illinois. And Pastor Warren Stewart of Arizona. Good morning to the New Day Coalition for Equity for Black America. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Stacy.
Good morning. Morning.
Good morning. Good to have you bright and early this morning. Pastor Hines, I know you're the leader of this coalition. Tell us, first of all, about the organization and the structure of the New Day Coalition.
Certainly. First of all, let me say thank you on behalf of all of us for this privilege and opportunity to go into so many homes this morning. New Day Coalition was basically birthed out of a burden for many of us that are on as it relates to the demise of our community. And certainly there was not a strong voice, basically, as it relates to helping and assisting. And so we had a Zoom call in November 2020, and the New Day Coalition for Equity for Black America was birthed out of that, with basically 5 agenda for Black America, because President Biden won the election, and he made the statement that he was going to have the back of Black America because Black America had his back. So we decided to shape an agenda that would better the quality of life for our people. And the basic theme is it's about us, it's about we, it's not about I, and it's not about me. And so that's why it's a coalition, and that's why we, the leaders of our coalition, are on today to talk about that. We are already made application for our 501c3 and our 501c4 to do interchangeability as we not only initiate initiatives, but also as we try to stabilize and certainly eradicate a lot of the laws that would be fighting against us.
Yeah, thanks for that introduction, Pastor Hosea Hines. Right now, I want to formally introduce everyone to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's president and CEO, our great leader, Dr. Benjamin Chavis. Good morning, Dr. Chavis.
Good morning. God bless you, and to Pastor Hines and to all the other pastors. God bless you all. On behalf of the Black Press of America, we welcome you on Let It Be Known, and there's a strong affinity between the Black church and the Black press.
And Dr. Chavis, so the New Day Coalition, they are broken up into different agendas, if you will, initiatives, if you will, not agendas, but initiatives, I like to call it. And Pastor Dr. Rosser is handling the criminal justice reform. Dr. Rosser, can you speak a little bit to that and where things stand in your view and the coalition's view as far as criminal justice reform is concerned?
Well, absolutely. Thank you very much, Stacy. For my focus, if you will, is from moving from selective criminal justice to equitable criminal justice. And what this basically means is, we want to look closely at how police relations are throughout the country. We also want to look at how the justice system unfairly treats people of color, particularly as it comes to cash bonds and equitable sentences. We want to ensure that everyone is equal in America, not just the rich, not just those that are well connected, but everyone has a fair shake when they come before the judge and the justice system. That our men and our women of color are able to do, if they're convicted, that they have the same sentence as someone who is well connected, like, say, one of our popular families.
Yeah, and Dr. Rosser, can you speak more generally, or basically, can you just speak more to the way things stand now in our criminal justice system as it pertains to African Americans in particular?
Well, specifically, I'm thinking about my past experience as a police officer. I at least thought that I was being fair and equitable with everyone that I came in contact with. I didn't target, I didn't profile, I didn't subject people to undue search and seizure. I didn't subscribe to what's called stop and frisk. If there was something that needed to be done, I did it with the authority that I was given as a police officer, and I didn't what we call tack on charges to hold people over and to get a higher bond for the state. I think that what we need to do in America as police is reach out into the community and have more of a personal contact. I'm a big advocate of community-oriented policing. I believe it works. I've been a police officer that has worked in the community-oriented policing, and you see a change in the neighborhood. You see a change in the people, in the interactions that police have.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. And I want to go to Dr. Robinson. I know that your part in the coalition, you're leading efforts in affordable housing, and we see, we look around the country, we see a lot of gentrification, we see a lot of people being priced out onto the streets. So give us an overview of what you're doing, Pastor Donald Robinson.
Good morning again, Brother Stacy, and thanks again for the opportunity. But as you well stated, there is a great concern and a great need across the country as it relates to affordable housing. And it is our plan to develop and address those concerns regarding home ownership inequities at the federal, state, and local levels. We want to also look at sustainable housing. We know that's essential to the physical, the emotional, and economic health of our communities and also our families and individuals. That's our thrust. Get into our communities and partner with local officials and state and federal officials to address those concerns.
Yeah, appreciate that, Pastor Donald Robinson. And I want to go now to, and I know Dr. Jones has been having some issues with his connection. So before we lose him again, I wanted to jump over to him because he's he's doing economic development, and that's also a vital part of the coalition. Dr. Jones, can you clue us in a little bit on your angle here, what you're doing as far as economic development?
Thank you so much, and appreciate you having us on. One of the things that is apparent and evident in the Black community is the fact that we, as the African American community, spend about $5 trillion and contribute that amount of money into the American economy on a yearly basis, but we are only receiving in services, not services that are in the trillions, but in the billions and maybe even in the millions. So one of the things that we are trying to do and will move forward in doing is to establish a relationship with various banks, and the fact that there is an act called the CRA, the Community Reinvestment Act, wherein banks reinvest in our communities as a result of our investment in the communities, or to the banks rather. And they tend to feel like, okay, if we buy a table at a banquet or support a dinner that the Black community is having, then that's investing in the community. But we want to move beyond that into the fact of getting into some of the resources that banks have that have been really earmarked for our community. And one of the ways that we're going to strive to do that is to establish sort of chambers of commerce within our cities, so that we can gather all of our African American businesses together and buy our products and get our resources in bulk rather than individually. If there are 15 or 20 barbershops within our city of an African American ownership or entrepreneurship, then we can come together and buy our supplies together rather than separate, and we can get things and services at a lower rate. We're going to be pressing banks, not just asking them to buy banquet tickets, but pressing them to share with us those funds that are part of the Community Reinvestment Act, so forth and so on. So that's in a nutshell what we are noticing, what we're trying to do and get around.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Stewart, education obviously is vital. Education is something that, especially over the past year, many have struggled with because of the in-person learning. Tell us about the holistic education that you are taking initiative, Dr. Warren Stewart.
Thank you, Brother Stacy, and always good to be on the program with Dr. Ben Chavis. He's one of our great leaders. Holistic education it's what it says, deals with the students, the family, the community, the educators, the government, communities of faith. We have in many cities and towns around the nation what I would call public education apartheid. Public education is not equal, and we are a coalition about equity for Black people, and there needs to be equitable funding for education for all students, not just those in the suburbs, not just those that have a high income tax base, but those who are in the inner cities who have been dealing with systemic racism on a daily basis. Our young people are just as intelligent as any young people on the face of the earth, but they have so many obstacles that they face just to get to school. And COVID-19 was one pandemic, but we know we've had systemic racism in this land for 402 years. So our concept of holistic education provides for public funding that is equitable, behavioral health resources, all kinds of support, so that our young people will have a fighting chance, beginning with preschool through high school.
Wow, Pastor Stewart, appreciate that. And as everyone see, we have 6 distinguished guests this morning. With that, we are going to go overtime today, at least 15 minutes over. So ask your questions. We'll take your questions as well. We see everyone saying good morning, but you can also ask these distinguished gentlemen some questions too. When we say doctor, we say pastor. People listen when you say doctor. People listen when you say pastor. But the ears really perk up when they say bishop. So Bishop, you are tackling affordable housing. Tell us a little bit about that from your perspective.
Yeah, good morning, Stacy. I'm actually tackling health disparities, but you are right, because each one of the issues previously spoken above about actually affect our health disparities, social economic issues, housing, policing. The disparities are wide. We know the statistics. I think in this COVID season, it has become blatant. It has become obvious that the healthcare system in America does not treat people of color fairly. And of course, some of this has to do with literacy for our people, but also access to doctors and to care, and even the stigma of the relationship between the African American community and the health community. And the numbers are over the top in every area: heart disease, diabetes, even kidney failure. We are 3 times more likely to have kidney failure than our white counterparts. And so it is important that we speak to this issue, starting from the medical school end to also the government end, where much of our health system is controlled by government health dollars.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would be a crime if I don't bring Dr. Chavis into this conversation. Dr. Chavis?
Well, thank you. No, I just want to listen to our great leaders in the various places that they're making a real difference. And I thank Dr. Stewart. I can't never go to Phoenix without checking in with Dr. Stewart. But let me just tell you that I just want to emphasize something, that if it were not for the Black church, we would not have a civil rights movement. If it were not for the Black church, we would not have the Black press. If it were not for the Black church, we would be not where we are today. And where we are today, despite all of the challenges, and that's why I'm so glad these coalition is together, because each of you have different sectors of the movement. The movement is interrelated, interdisciplinary. And I'm so pleased on behalf of the Black press, Stacy. I'm glad we extended the time so we can get some questions from our audience. But I just want to assure Dr. Hines and all of the members of the coalition that you can depend on the Black press of America to be with you, to support you, to help find ways. I think that in 2021, yes, we have to put pressure on the government. Yes, we have to put pressure on state legislatures. Yes, we have to put pressure on municipalities. But I also believe that, God helps those that helps themselves. And a lot of times I think that if I had to put my finger on one issue that affects all of us, over 50 million African Americans, and that is sometimes we underestimate our own capacity to solve our problems, our own capacity, we understate our own blessings, and not the pastors, but I'm talking about the listening audience. There's so many opportunities today. The opportunities today and the chances and the interest to move forward are much greater than the forces of repression, than the forces of suppression. Certainly in those states that where all this voter suppression is going on, the key to voter suppression is to have an overwhelming voter turnout, not to let the enemies of our people rule the day. So I'm excited about this coalition, and I just want to say on behalf of the NNPA, you will have our 100% support.
And Dr. Chavis, prior to going live, our producer Norman Rich told these gentlemen, as pastors, he knows that they can give sermons. He told them they could not give sermons, and you missed that. You missed that preamble.
That's okay. That's okay. But keep in mind, if it wasn't for sermons, our people would be lost. Don't ever put down the word. we're in the word business, and you have some of the top wordsmiths, top theologians, top social gospel people in the world on the show this morning. That's why we extended the program. So we're very grateful.
And Nicole McDaniel asks, this is for you pastors and bishop. This is for you guys. She says, what role, if any, do you think reparations may play in addressing the disparities in all these different areas? And any one of you could take it. Pastor Hines, you want to kick it off?
Sure. One of the things that I believe we have to realize, and Dr. Chavis said it, basically discover the strength of Black America. As Dr. Jones mentioned about the $5 trillion that we actually integrate into American society. Well, we have to dig deep within our community as time passed, where our community supported each other and we patronize our businesses. And even though we're looking for some things extra, we have to start where we are right now with the value system of our lives, the quality of life that we can make within our communities, as well as the number of entrepreneurship that we can launch, initiatives that we can start in order to build the economy in our community. And certainly recreation is extremely important because there needs to be what's called a fair share as it relates to the economic system, as it relates to services, service organizations, and the basic things that we need to better the quality of life in our community.
Yeah, and Dr. Chavis, Sam Hines writes, commends you, recognizing that we have capacity beyond measures. So Sam Hines totally agrees with your comment. Dr. Stewart, that question on reparations, you're on the economic development part of this. What's your thoughts on reparations and how it could play a role in all that we're talking about this morning?
Well, Brother Brown, I'm actually on education, but I can
messing it up.
But I can speak to that. There's a text. I know you said don't preach, but there's a text in Luke about Zacchaeus, and Zacchaeus was a tax collector. And when he met Jesus, he invited him to. Jesus went to his house, and he said, "I will restore everybody from whom I've done wrong fourfold." That's reparations based on Scripture. So what the systemic racist community in this land has done to us for 402 years, they need to restore to us all they have taken from us through slavery, through Reconstruction, through Jim Crow, and even modern day systemic racism. They owe us reparations.
So Dr. Jones, thank you, Dr. Stewart. I think many will agree with you on that. Dr. Jones, tell me you're the one with economic development.
I think that, and I am agreeing with everything that has been said, especially when Dr. Chavis said that we have to do something for ourselves in the meantime. Now we are looking for reparations and so forth, and we've been looking for help being on the way for 400 years or more. It's always help is on the way. It's coming. It's going to happen. But and we believe that, and we're looking for it, and it should be done from a biblical perspective, from a political perspective, from all perspectives. But in the meantime, it's our contention that something has to be done, and the thing that has to be done now will depend on us banding together, coming together, and making certain demands that will ultimately lead to total reparation. But there's some things that we can do now among ourselves and in the local community with governmental organizations, political organizations, banks, so forth, and other businesses that can relieve us of some of the pressure that we're facing now. But yes, definitely, reparation will play a large part in the economic development of the African American community.
Yeah, and before I go to the bishop, for clarity, Norman says, for clarity, the admonishment against preaching was about length of sermon, not content of the sermon. Bishop, your response to the reparations question.
Well, I think the reparation question is severely important because so much of our income yearly is spent in the area of healthcare. in the Black community. And even then we get subpar healthcare in many of our communities, both rural and urban. Reparations, of course, is essential because as it relates to the health community, they have held us in medical apartheid for so long that we are going to need dollars for literacy, for real training, but also for real access. So reparations have to have different forms because there has to be a targeted area as it relates to health, because health costs affects every area of our lives. And of course, the length of our lives are affected by poor health care. And it's going to take dollars because of the rising cost of health care.
I like that expression, medical apartheid. I think it's so appropriate. We did not hear on the question. It'd be an interesting question for you, Dr. Rosser, in criminal justice reform on this idea of reparations. How would that work with criminal justice reform? How would it affect criminal justice reform?
Thank you, Stacy. I was just sitting here thinking, and all of our panelists, of course, are very learned men, and I'm thinking about in terms of criminal justice, how do you repay? How do you restore, which is at essence what reparations is? How do you reconcile, restore, and bring someone back to wholeness when 30 years of their life has been taken from them because of a crime that they did not commit on a sentence that they had to serve? How do we treat those who have died, the George Floyds of the world who have died at the hands of police violence out of racism? How do we repair the family and bring them back to wholeness? The family of let's just call Emmett Till for one. It's almost impossible. So what we must do is, from a criminal justice perspective, is from this point forward, ensure that everything that is done correctly, done properly, and done fairly.
Yeah. And Cheryl Smith, our publisher down at iMessenger Media and the Texas Metro News, she's asking, does the coalition include women clergy members?
Yes, Stacy. Certainly, we have several that are on the boards of the 501c3 as well as 501c4. As a matter of fact, our coalition has about 23 consultants, and there are a number of women that are on that particular entity. We are about, again, it's about us, it's about we, it's not about I, and it's not about me. And so it is definitely inclusive. And the person who asked the question, certainly we invite you to become a part of our coalition.
Yeah, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Chavis in a moment. I just wanted to get Bobby Henry his question in from Fort Lauderdale, the West Side Gazette, our publisher down there. He says, speaking daily with our dollars sometimes means withholding them from businesses who don't show respect for us. What do you all see, if any, as a current boycott? And anyone can start. Anyone can respond. Bishop?
Well, it may be difficult in certain areas because when you start talking about healthcare, you need the doctor, you need the nurse, but we can target who we receive our health care from in our local areas. I think that's important. I think we need to galvanize our buying strength. The boycott has been such a tool for our community because when we hurt pocketbooks and wallets, we get the attention of our white counterparts and those who are in power, who keeps this systemic racism machine working. And every once in a while, you got to cause that machine to suffer a little bit so that they'll come in and alter the workings, the inner workings of it. So I agree with that. But oftentimes, we're the first one cut. When they don't have money for health care, they take the money from our community to serve their community. And so we have to devise a plan and a program that will affect that. So if we have a boycott, we use cars when we boycotted in Montgomery. So what would be our alternative, and to make sure that we have a good plan as it relates to that?
Yeah, I'm going to go to Dr. Chavis, and after that, we have a couple more questions we certainly want to get to. It might be more by that time, but Dr. Chavis, I think is important. We know your history well. We know that you have fought all your life for civil rights, and this conversation is certainly one that's right up your alley, so to speak. So, take it away, Dr. Chavis.
Well, thank you. Now, again, I want to thank all of the members of the coalition that are present. And one of the reasons why we extended the time was because of the not only the relevance, but the substance of what our brothers are sharing. I'm glad Cheryl Smith asked the question about the role of Black women in the church, Black women in the movement, and certainly we all affirm their importance. One of the things I wanted just to ask Dr. Hines and each member of the coalition is our young people. Stacy knows that whenever we have guests on our community, on our programs, I always make reference to having an intergenerational movement. It seems to me we need to raise up a new generation of freedom fighters. And I think that from a cultural perspective and from a theological perspective, I see a lot of young people are into gospel music. A lot of young people are into various roles that they can possibly play in the church. I want the coalition to speak to the importance of Generation Z and millennials from an African American perspective to make sure that they not only get the right mentorship, the right apprenticeship, but the right encouragement. Again, if I had to put my finger on one thing that all our young people are facing, and that is how this world discourages them rather than encourages them. And so what does the coalition say about just embracing our young people so that they know that they are loved, that they're respected, and that they're cared about, not only in our families, but in our extended families, in our communities at large?
Well, thank you, Dr. Chavis, for that, because that's extremely important. I'll just start off. Our babies, our youngsters, our millennials are extremely important. And you're certainly right. Many of them feel rejected. Many of them feel cast out, abandoned, especially by the Black church. And many of them have lost a lot of confidence within the Black church. We have those discussions as we meet as coalition, also with our regional leaders as it relates to that. We do have some millennials that are working with us intensively. Our IT person, Stacy Lewis, he's one, and he shares with us those concerns as it relates to bringing in millennials and our youth and certainly our children. And we want to be ultra conclusive, because the reality of it is all of us know any church that doesn't have anybody young is going to die real soon. And so they're extremely important. We not only have to embrace them, but we have to also seek to understand them. This is a new generation, a new train of thought, certainly different kind of goals, maybe even different kind of basic values. I have a saying, methods are many, principles are few. Methods always change, but principles never do. And for us to be able to reach them, many times we have to change our methodology, not our principles, but our methodology, in accepting them for who they are, rather than basically who we want them to be.
Yeah, I would like to add to that. There in Phoenix, we are intentionally and strategically speaking with the younger generation of leaders, those who are millennials, those who are Generation Z, and we are coming together, talking things out, trying to build relationships first, and then we get with what can we do together. So, but it has to be intentional. It has to be strategic.
Yeah, and for the coalition, another question from Nicole McDaniel. She says, outside of voting and supporting Black business, how do individuals get involved with helping the community and pushing the agenda forward? And I want to start with Dr. Rosser and then Dr. Jones, and the rest of the coalition can also respond. We want to hear from Dr. Robinson as well. You guys can all respond to that, but I want to start there because we're not hearing a whole lot from those gentlemen, so we want to hear their voices.
Okay,
thank you. If you would, could you repeat that question, because I missed it here?
Absolutely. Outside of voting and supporting Black business, how do individuals get involved with helping the community and pushing the agenda forward?
I believe in education. Education is the key to it all. If we don't know how to perform. We don't know what the rules are. And I believe that the coalition is set up so that we can not only engage, but educate our Black people. One of the things, and if I could just step back into the youth question, how do we engage them? This is a different generation than we've ever seen before. And this generation is not as connected to the church because they don't see a need for the church. They don't see a need for education. And we've got to instill in them that this is the bedrock of what they will do in the future. If you don't know a law is a law, then how will you know if you've broken it? So we need to make sure that we provide opportunities to reach out to the millennials and the Generation Ys. Also, there's a theory out there, and I'm not so sure that I believe it, but there's a theory that says that the millennials are not so engaged in church because it is always a method of going back and forth to church, that they will engage in programs and they'll do projects, but they don't want to have a long-lasting relationship with anyone. And they have to figure out, we have to instill in them that those relationships build on larger things for the future.
Dr. Jones?
A part of the question was, how can people become involved in moving the agenda forward? The coalition have set up its website wherein all of our areas are represented. All the gentlemen who are on this call today, or this Zoom today, they represent certain areas throughout the United States of America. And if you want to become involved, I think the coalition is doing a great job in including and trying to embrace our younger people, the millennials and so forth, and Generation X. If you would go on there, whatever region you are a part of, whether it's the Northeastern, the Southeastern, the Western, contact those leaders in those areas and get actively involved with the process. Don't just be on the sideline observing, but get involved. And I think that that's a good way to move the agenda forward rather than just voting and so forth and so on. Although millennials may realize that they think that they don't need the church, they think they don't need other things, you're going to need some economic development. You're going to need some money to do everything that we're talking about today. And that's what the coalition is moving forward to do. And we're looking forward to doing it. So we look forward to everybody who wants to get involved to come on board and push the agenda forward.
Dr. Chavis, you were 14 years old when you started working alongside Dr. Martin Luther King. What was different then? What do you see that might have been different then, where you were very young? So I would imagine that there were other young ones involved. What was different then than perhaps today, or what might be the same that we're just missing?
Well, I see the evolution. I think there are more opportunities today in 2021 than we had in the 1960s. And, I just didn't walk myself into SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. I was brought in, I was welcomed in, I was mentored, and I was a blessing. And that's a good segue, Stacy. I just wanted to also raise the question with the coalition about the global piece, the international piece, the diaspora of our people, from Africa to the Caribbean to Brazil and across these United States. People of African descent are strategically located, not just in America, but all over the world. What is the perspective of the coalition about the future of our people? I now know there's even debate about whether or not we should demand to be inclusive in space. But before we go into space, I want to make sure that we deal with the equity issues that have faced us on Earth. I would like to see more heaven on earth, and led by the Black church, the Black press, our HBCUs, as well as our African diaspora. Can you just speak about the global Black church and the global Black press?
Dr. Chavis, we had on our altar for our prayer on Sunday, we had Haiti with the assassination of the president of Haiti and their stability. We had Nigeria, where over 100 and some students were kidnapped from the Bethel Baptist High School in Nigeria. We intentionally and encourage our brothers and sisters in the church, in the Black church, to remember that people of African descent are being discriminated against all over the world, and
Yes.
are suffering from colonialism, from all types of political apartheid. And so we must remember we are part of the first family of human beings, Black people.
Very
So,
good. Thank you, Dr. Stewart. Very good.
Yeah, and certainly, Dr. Chavis. Also, at the beginning, as I mentioned about our organization, it's 501c3 that deals with the initiative, philanthropic giving, and so forth. But the 501c4, it is named the Equity Coalition for People of Color, and that means that people not only in the United States but all around the world. And so the global sense is very, very much inclusive as it relates to us in the vision for the coalition.
If I could address, Brother Stacy, this whole issue, I think one of the problems, and I want to put both questions together as it relates to the millennials and the younger people, as well as this whole issue of us globally, that part of the struggle of the African American church has been that we have not told our own story. We have not shared the resources or the information about the many resources that the Black church has done historically throughout the years. And so most time when young people think of us, they think of us only the civil rights movement, not knowing that we have been in economic development. We have been in worldwide missions. We have galvanized to do things for people of color all around the world as individual churches and individual denominations. And because we have not told that story, many times they don't think we're doing the work. And so I think part of the Black church's issue is that we have to speak up about what we're already doing and then move that ahead.
Yeah, and Pastor
Very
Robinson,
good.
did you want to jump in on that as well?
Robinson? Yes, I believe also that the global church piece is important. I'm in New Orleans, and so you probably well know that New Orleans is a melting pot for all different kinds of cultures. And in our church, we have persons from different backgrounds and nationalities. So we are involved with some of our local organizations to address those concerns outside of the United States. I think that's a critical piece for the church to be involved in.
Gotcha, and thanks again for that. One other question, I guess we probably should let Nicole McDaniel co-host, because she has another great question. She says, how can we leverage what we learned and experienced during the pandemic about healthcare disparities, police brutality, and other symptoms of systemic racism to keep people engaged and not become complacent about these issues once again as we move into the post-pandemic new normal? And before you answer that question, as we wind down the program, we're going to have to excuse our president. I think he has another commitment as we have run over time. But Dr. Chavis, of course, we appreciate you as always.
Well, I just want to say to the coalition, count us in, count the Black press in. We're going to be there with you hand in hand across America and throughout the world. I think, I just want to end on this point. God's blessings don't stop whatever the devil does. And I think that this coalition is a great representation of not only the possibilities and the potentialities, but I believe you represent the best of the best. And again, we're just so pleased. And Stacy, we're going to have to reschedule to get this coalition back so we can discuss all the issues. Maybe we could have a regular visit from the coalition on the Black press of America. We're not going to make it until we all embrace one another in our various fields, in our various endeavors, in our various cities, in our various communities. I'm just always, I'm more excited and hopeful and faithful today than I was in the 1960s, because I see that every ounce, every inch of progress that we've made has become because of our strong faith in God.
Dr. Chavis, you know, it was our publisher down at the Mississippi Link, Jackie Hampton, who got this coalition together for us. So we want to give a shout out to Jackie. And thanks a lot, Dr. Chavis. We will see you tomorrow, Dr. Chavis. And I want to go back before we close, Bishop and Pastor Hines, Nicole McDaniel's question, how can we leverage what we've learned and experienced during the pandemic about healthcare disparities, police brutality, and other symptoms of systemic racism to keep people engaged and not become complacent about these issues once again as we move into the post-pandemic, quote unquote, new normal. And Pastor Hines, you can start with.
Okay, Stacy, repeat the question for me, please. I thought you had. Okay.
Absolutely. How can we leverage what we learned and experienced during the pandemic about healthcare disparities, police brutality, and other symptoms of systemic racism to keep people engaged and not become complacent about these issues once again as we move into the post-pandemic, quote unquote, new normal?
Certainly, I think one of the things that is so important is that we have social media, and the dissemination of information is extremely important, and we have to keep these issues in front of our people, keep them on the minds of our people, and keep them as it relates to a tool to engage our people. There are a number of initiatives that the coalition is introducing. Let me just say one that will be as a continuation on the 17th of this month. That was the transition day for John Lewis. And we are obtaining 6.2 million signatures for the executive summary of our agenda for Black America to be placed on President Biden's desk so that he can keep his word as it relates to having the back of Black America. And so that's one of the things that each and every person can constantly keep engaged by helping us to recruit the individuals for that. Each of the regions that Pastor Jones said have a Facebook page, and you just simply have to type in ANCEBA, ANCEBA, and you'll be able to see our covenant as it relates to our coalition. You'll be able to see our position paper. You'll be able to see our structure, our mission statement, our vision statement, as well as our theme, as well as our contact information. The engagement is to be able to share and recruit. One of the things that will gain great momentum for our people, and one of the things that will really shake America up, is for Black America stand together. That's going to be the ultimate key. And that way, all of us will still be constantly and consistently engaged as we move past this pandemic.
Yeah. And Bishop, you want to jump in on that as well?
Well,
and
I think
like to hear, actually, I'm sorry, Bishop, I'll let you go on this, but I also just wanted to add that I wanted to hear from Dr. Rosso on that too, because part of the question is about police brutality. But go ahead, Bishop.
So I think that what Dr. Hines said today is so essential. I think, of course, multi-generational involvement is crucial in keeping, sometimes we let things die, but we have to remind people how things personally affect them and tap into what I call passion points, where they have issues that they are passionate about, to hook up with the coalition, whether or not it's because you had someone who has suffered socioeconomically or criminal justice or housing, and for us to keep that moving forward. And like the church has remained alive, because even though we've suffered through 2,000 years of commentary about our relevancy, the way that we keep moving forward is we keep mentoring around the issues that are important, not only to Christ, but to our community.
Yeah. Dr. Rosser?
Sure. Thanks, Stacy. One of the things that we have to do is ensure that our communities do not develop apathy during this period of time of transition from the old way from the pandemic, rather, into the new normal. We have a very powerful tool, and probably 98% of Americans carry it around. It's called a cell phone. If there is something going on, all police activity needs to be filmed. That's just me as a police officer. It keeps everybody honest. It keeps everybody clear. And when things go wrong, when there is racism that is blatant, when there is abuse being done, we need to put that on the social media channels and make sure that people see it. We cannot forget that everything that has happened won't happen again. The propensity is there. So we've got to make sure that people know, people see, and people hear. And most of all, as the coalition is doing, we get regular updates on what's going on around the country. So subscribe to our Twitter feed and see those things as well. And let's all be connected, because as our president said, unity is how we're going to make this work.
Yeah. And another question from Bobby Henry, our publisher in Fort Lauderdale, Florida at the Westside Gazette. He says, where is our Black national leadership programs that teach leadership from a Black needs perspective, not from racism, but from realism? Dr. Stewart?
Would you repeat that question again? I want to make sure I answered properly.
Absolutely. He says, where is our Black national leadership programs that teach leadership from a Black needs perspective, not from racism, but from realism?
Well, you cannot disconnect racism from realism. I mean, it's, all this conversation about critical race theory. As I looked at the critical race theory, it talks about that racism is not just an individual factor, motivation and action. It is tied into the system. Well, that's not a theory. I think it should not be called a critical race theory, critical race truth. It is truth. And so yes, we need leadership. And I'm glad you brought back, the person brought back the question of education. We can't forget our babies. Our babies, our little ones, are confronted with racism from the moment they come out of, well, actually before they come out of the womb. That goes back to the health disparity piece. And so we got to make sure, because it is proven that one's attitude, psyche, behavior is pretty much set by the first grade. And so we got to make sure our babies have a healthy sense of who they are, created in God's image, and that regardless of their color, their background, their neighborhood, their economic status, they are special to God and should be special to all of us. So I hope that helped answer that question.
Absolutely. And wanted to hear also from Pastor Robinson as well. You heard the question. Do you need me to repeat the question, Pastor Robinson?
No, again, very quickly. Again, I think Black leadership is important, and the church also has been over the years a place where our young people and most of us have developed our leadership skills. And there are other organizations in our communities and other opportunities whereby leadership can be developed. In our community, we have a community organizing organization that we're part of that gathers together young persons and older persons and helps us to develop our leadership skills in going before public officials and how to do one-on-ones and things of that nature to engage our community. So there are several entities and opportunities out there, and I'll be more than happy to share some with those who are interested.
Yeah, thanks for that. And people often overlook the fact that pastors, bishops are people. Can each of you speak about why this is important to you personally, not just as a pastor or a bishop?
Certainly, Stacy, I'll start it off. Let me just say this. I often say, and I use this terminology, I apologize for being your pastor and a human at the same time. We do have fragilities, we have weaknesses, we have strengths. Certainly, as individuals, we hurt, our heart aches, we have burdens, we get sick, we get tired, we get angry, and those particular things. And so for our people to understand that we are human also is one of the greatest keys to building good, strong relationships with individuals.
Yeah.
I'll say amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see.
One of my most learned fellow brothers, Dr. Kenneth Ulmer, said to his congregation one day in LA that even though I'm the shepherd, I still got a little little lamb in me. And so, so the truth of the matter is, we are all trying to live up to the image of those who were our forefathers, and ultimately to walk worthy of the Christ who has saved us.
I'll just state quickly, Luke 4, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for he hath anointed me to preach the gospel. And so therefore I have no other choice but to engage myself in this work and to do what is assigned me to do.
Well, that leaves you,
I'll be
Dr.
very quick with mine as well. I have a 21-year-old and a 17-year-old black male, and I instill in them every day that I speak with them that they are targets, not just for, they are triple threats as well as being targets. They're educated, they're black, and they're young. And I instill in them that you cannot disqualify yourself over foolishness. So we have to represent not just ourselves, as I was taught, but we represent the entire black race every time we step out of the door. And I have a congregation of young people as well, 28 down to 15, and even the babies. And we've got to make sure that our communities are safe, not just from the predators within the community, but from the predators outside of the community that seek to crush them in their days ahead.
Well, thank you for that. And the last question is it's really directed at Pastor Hines. It comes from Stacy Lewis. If I can pull that question up right quick, I had it. Here we go. Thanks, Norman. For Pastor Hines, why are you so passionate about what's going on in Black America and what makes NCBA different from other organizations we've seen before?
Certainly. My passion is based on the burden that I have for our people. And, because I'm pro-Black, it doesn't mean that I'm anti-white. But I remember Jesus said to a Syrophoenician woman that God has sent me to my people. But yet he did not denounce her, but he did recognize her. But he also recognized I grew up in the civil rights era. My father was a good friend of Dr. King. Dr. King actually preached at Asia Baptist Church in Lexington, Mississippi. The Klan used to come and sit in front of our house, and our relatives used to sit on the porch with shotguns and rifles. We would go to church, and cars would try to run us off the road, and so much trauma. And so as I looked at America and I looked at our people globally, and I didn't necessarily see the spiritual community really rising up to the point and doing four basic things. First of all, encouraging our people. Second of all, informing our people. Third of all, preparing our people. And then fourth, engaging our people. It was a driving force behind me that really, really moved upon my heart, my mind, and my spirit that something really needed to be done. And so after prayer and certainly getting together with the 15 individuals at the beginning in the month of November 2020, it just overwhelmed me. And so I'm really engulfed in this, and I believe that God is going to bless us to accomplish those things. I have children. I have 26 grandchildren. I have 15 great grands. And Papa, Dad, pastor, husband, brother, father, African-American male. It's burning, like Jeremiah said, it's like fire in my bones. And the passion is so great and so consuming that it is on my agenda with our church, with our family, and NCBA every day. whether it's a phone call, whether it's a visitation, whether it's reaching out to an individual, whether the person joining wanting to know more information about the church or about Ansiba. And so this passion is deeply ingrained. And I say this, it's my life right now. As I get older, as I move to the point of where gracefully I believe God is going to call me home, I do want to hear God tell me that I did a great job with what he gave me to do, what he placed in my hands. And I want him to say these words, "Well done, thy good and faithful servant."
Well, we'd like to thank the New Day Coalition. We really appreciate you guys getting with us this morning. It was a really interesting conversation. We extended this program, which is normally a half hour, as our viewers know, to a full hour to make sure that everyone was heard. Thanks so much. And I know Dr. Chavis appreciates you. Jackie Hampton, we thank Jackie Hampton. She appreciates you as well. And all of our publishers, we know that this was something that they look forward to. Let it be known, thoroughly test information. As Marvin Gaye saying, believe half of what you see and none of what you hear. Vet and vet some more. Thanks for joining us. We will see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Stacy.